Hey, y'all, I'm Bud Elliott, and this is my college football summer school series on Cover 3. I bring on the team experts from the 24/7 sports staff and ask them the questions I care about. No fluff. Which players will be toughest to replace? What position groups are sneakily better or worse than I realize? We get you the scoop on each team in 20 minutes or less. Let's go. Hey, guys, welcome back in. Bud Elliott here, and this is my Cover 3 college football summer school series. Today, we're going to go out west. We're going to talk Arizona. I'm going to bring on Jason Scheer of Wildcat Authority, the foremost expert on everything Arizona. If you guys did not check out the site, you really should. You guys know I bring the best guests on here to talk, and Jason knows his stuff on Arizona. So welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So a nice jump forward for Arizona last year, 5-7. They did crack the top 80 in the power rankings, which, if you're Georgia, not great, but for Arizona, that's a substantial step forward. It had to be pretty fun to cover these guys.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot more fun than the years before that. Arizona football, if you guys are familiar with the program, was one, if not the worst major program in the nation. Really bad, not fun to watch at all. I mean, it was just a couple years ago, 3 years ago, they lost 70-7 to ASU. So the fact that they were competitive was nice, and they won some football games, and it was just a lot more entertaining product on the field overall.
Absolutely. And the real driver of their improvement was an offense that was 21st nationally if you adjust for opponent, which is a huge jump for them. Jayden de Laura, quarterback, had a pretty interesting year. So I find this guy kind of fascinating. I mean, 63% completions, but he also throws 13 picks. But his sack avoidance, if you look at like the pressure rate allowed versus the sacks that he actually took, is great. It's like, I don't know, maybe he's throwing more picks after like crazy scrambles and just throwing out of bounds or something like that. But that sack avoidance number is really pretty awesome. And he showcases a strong arm. I mean, 48% success rate on dropbacks. Like, this guy might be one of the more underappreciated quarterbacks out there.
Yeah, I mean, and you nailed it. A lot of his interceptions came, I think three of them came against Cal when they were down pretty big, and he was trying to really push it. And he had multiple picks where he would kind of scramble around, and instead of throwing it out of bounds, he would throw an interception. And that's probably been the focus in the offseason, is kind of living to play for another down. But he's super talented. There's a lot of lists of best quarterbacks in the Pac-12, and he's not on it. And I think it's been noticed around the program. The coaching staff's really high on him. They believe that if they can coach him up a little bit more and keep him disciplined, he's going to have a huge season. The talent is absolutely there. The system's there. The guys around him. He returned a lot on offense. He's a guy where, Arizona's had quarterback competitions pretty much every year in the last 5 years or so. And Jedd Fisch at the end of last season said, basically, make no mistake about it, Jayden de Laura is our starting quarterback. And, you've seen he had a nice spring, and they absolutely believe that he's ready with some extra maturity to kind of take that next step and have an even better season.
I would say like the average fan out there, can you name Arizona's running backs? They probably couldn't, but like Wiley and Coleman had a sneakily efficient year that like maybe it was because teams were focused on the passing game so much. I don't really blame them, I guess, but those guys made the most of their opportunities. This is a fairly balanced attack, it seems. I assume that'll continue.
Yeah, I mean, Arizona's running back group to me is super underrated. Michael Wiley in the Territorial Cup against ASU ran for over 200 yards, and a lot of people thought that he would go pro or even transfer, just because that's what everyone's doing these days. But he came back, and so he came back for another year. Jonah Coleman was a freshman. He looks bigger, stronger. They have DJ Williams back. They have Rayshon Speedy Luke, who was a true freshman but got hurt last season. So they really have 4 running backs that they plan on using this season in different roles. And the good thing is they all kind of complement each other. None of them are really exactly the same, but it is a group that they're very confident in. I don't know if they're going to run the ball that much more. It's kind of it depends on the system, and their offense is very much based on what other teams are giving them. But when you're talking about positions of concern for Arizona, running backs don't come up at all. I mean, it is a group that they're confident in and has quite a bit of talent.
So at the receiver position, I like Cowing, and I really like McMillan quite a bit. It was a stud true freshman. They do lose Dorian Singer to USC, and I thought one of the things, I didn't get to watch every Arizona game, but I do try to watch a lot of late night stuff. Having that trio was pretty scary. What kind of drop off, if any, would you expect from this room? And if there's not a drop off, who would you expect to fill that role that Singer had?
So Arizona, what they did is they kind of moved things around a little bit. Jacob Cowing was in the slot at Arizona. He played outside a little bit at UTEP, and what they did is they moved Cowing to that outside spot where Singer was. So now Cowing and T-Mac are on the outside, and they have a guy that was a freshman last year, Kevin Green Jr., who they really like. He put together a really strong spring. They're confident in his ability. And it also wouldn't surprise me if they go out and try to land a wide receiver in the portal. Montana Lamonius Craig is a guy that they've been recruiting, and there's others. And so, there's depth at wide receiver, but anytime you land a player of Dorian or lose a player of Dorian Singer's quality, there's going to be some questions. They like Kevin Green, and I think when you talk to the coaching staff, they believe a lot of it is the system, where they'll be able to plug in a guy that they are confident in. And while he may not get Singer's touchdown numbers or numbers overall, there's ways to kind of make up for that, or they can get close. So, they like Cowing on the outside. T-Mac's going to take a jump, and it seems like they believe in Kevin Green being able to make an impact as well.
The offensive line, they do lose their right tackle, Peyton Fears. They lose Josh Donovan. Fears' numbers were not particularly good. Donovan seemed to be a decent player when he was in the lineup. Does this group, we think, status quo, or is there a reason to expect a big step up or a big step back?
I think that's probably the biggest concern on offense is the offensive line. Jordan Morgan coming back, the way he came back kind of sucks. He tore his ACL. He would have been a first-round pick. And so he came back to school for a year, which, it kind of sucks for him, but it's great for Arizona. So figuring he's healthy, and they do expect him to be healthy for that first game, he'll be the left tackle. And what they did is they moved Jonas Sabanea to right tackle. He was really good as a freshman. He is 100% a future NFL player, first-round pick type of talent. And so they locked that up at tackle. One of their right guard position is probably a little iffy. I could see them going in the transfer portal for that. They landed one of the best guards in the country out of high school in Raymond Polito. He couldn't come to campus early, which is a bit of a concern. Usually you like linemen to come in early and learn and adjust. But if he adjusts quickly, he could make a push for that starting spot. But overall, I think the offensive line is fine. But when you look at the offense as a whole, it's probably the biggest concern.
Let's go ahead and switch here to the defense. And the super positive portion of the podcast is basically over. Now we're going to talk a little bit lesser of a unit, or at least it was last year. We'll see how it is this year. If you look at the power ratings out there, whether it's SP or FPI or whatever, most of them only had 4 or 5 defenses in the whole country as worse than Arizona's defense. And I don't really see a strength. They did play at times, at least like their stats profile for listeners at home, kind of an extreme bend but don't break. They did not allow a ton of bombs, but they did allow teams to march down the field in an orderly fashion. And then once they got to the red zone, they also provided no resistance there. So like if you bend but don't break, but then you immediately break when people get to the red zone, it's really just kind of a slower death, right? Jason, my numbers have this defense as worse this year. So I'm really interested to pick your brain about this. They lose like their top 3 defensive linemen to graduation, LSU, and USC. And I don't know if the kid's going to start at LSU, but I think the guy that went to USC is probably going to start. Is this defensive line have a chance to not have a big drop off? I mean, it's weird for me projection wise. I'm not going to project them to be worse than Hawaii's defense, because I know they're not, but that's a lot of personnel to lose.
Yeah, I actually think they're going to be better. And,
okay. Really? Okay, yes. Let's hear this.
Well, the reason is they went out and they basically at the end of last year said, we're going to redo the entire defense through the transfer portal. And they had some young guys, but they went out and for instance, they landed Tyler Manoa from UCLA, who was a solid defensive lineman. UCLA had to move him to the O-line because of depth reasons. Now he's back at the D-line. He's looked good. They just landed Taylor Upshaw, who was originally at Michigan, then was at Colorado, left Colorado, so he'll have the playing time. They landed CO from Indiana football, who's a very solid interior defensive lineman. He'll come in and he'll play as well. So they Bill Norton from Georgia is another one. They landed him. And so they went to the portal, and basically their strategy was, we're going to get bigger. And, Parashand, the one that went to LSU, that one is very interesting to me. I'm curious to see how he does. Keon Bars is a very solid lineman. I think he'll do well at USC. But the biggest thing that's noticeable to me is they added a lot of size. They have legit 300-pounders on the defensive line. They have more depth than they did last season. There's guys where by the end of the year, like a Jacob Kungaika, Tai Uiagalelei, those guys were playing more as the year ended, and now they got bigger and stronger, and the coaching staff believes they'll take a step forward. They absolutely lost production on the defensive line. They're just betting on the transfers and the other guys being better than the guys they lost.
That makes sense, and at the very least, it's a quantity play too, to where they're staying fresher. I mean, I'm sure the drop off from the guys they lost to some of the other dudes they had to play a lot last year were, could be significant. Moving back a little bit on the defense, 3 of the top 4 listed linebackers are gone to transfer to UMass, transfer to Iowa, which surprised me a little bit, and then to, I believe, graduation, right? Roberts, Eccles, and Cage. Are any of those guys losses that you feel are significant losses? And if not, who would you have stepping up in their roles?
I think Eccles is going to hurt a little bit. He was kind of a leader on the defense. Jerry Roberts, who went to UMass, put up some numbers, but didn't really fit the scheme very well. He was the guy that Don Brown brought over. Then Don Brown went to UMass and brought him back over when he went to UMass. He fits that scheme better, but that's another position. Like Arizona has Jacob Manu, who's a freshman last year, who really impressed. He's returning, but then they went to Oregon. They got Justin Flo. And they went to Washington. They got Daniel Humuli. And so they've added guys. They went to Cal. They got Oren Patu. I mean, there's guys that they've added in the transfer portal, and it's just a matter of how good they're going to be. Like Justin Flo, the coaching staff loves. We know that how highly rated he was coming out of high school, but he wasn't able to put it together at Oregon. So are we looking at the Justin Flo that came out of high school? There's Justin Flo from Oregon, and that's a big thing. If it's the Justin Flo out of high school, right? I mean, he was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so if he's that guy, then it's an immediate upgrade. But if he's the guy that got injured and struggled at Oregon, there's going to be some growing pains there.
I guess it'll just depend on, you can get injured and somebody else takes your spot and then you're not able to get back on the field. But like if you're injured and you lost a step, then you're a different profile. So was he in for spring?
Yeah, he was in for spring, and he was, I would say, you can make a real argument that he was Arizona's best defender all spring.
Okay.
I mean, he came in right away and was making impacts, and the coaching staff absolutely love him.
Nice. I mean, that's pretty encouraging right there. Like that's nice. So they do lose to the secondary. Christian Roland Wallace goes to USC. Looks like they expect him to start based on talking to Ryan Abraham earlier this week. And then they lose, I guess, their top safety to UNLV, but like that's a clear downgrade. So I don't know how big of a loss that guy actually is. Should we be downgrading the secondary here? I would assume not, right? Or am I wrong here?
No, I wouldn't. Christian Roland Wallace is legitimately good. Obviously, he went to USC to start, but they have a guy named great name, Ephesians Prysock, who was
that is a great name.
Yep, a 4-star coming out of high school, was actually committed to USC and decommitted to go to Arizona. He's a 6'3" corner. I mean, to me, he's a guy that is a future pro. I don't know what round or whatever, but he looks like an NFL player. He's starting, and then they went and they added a guy, Charles Yates, out of JUCO. They could add another guy out of the transfer portal. I think they'll be fine at corner. Safety is a little bit of a concern. Jackson Turner going to UNLV was a little weird, but he's another guy that was getting hurt a lot last season. They went and they added Genesis Smith out of high school, Chandler Hamilton, who I like a lot. The coaching staff likes. They're bringing back the other guys at safety from last season, Isaiah Taylor. And so they feel comfortable in their secondary. I could see it being the same. That wouldn't surprise me if there's not like a huge increase in productivity, but I would be surprised if it's worse.
Gotcha. Where on this team would you say, other than quarterback, is the position group that has the largest drop off from the quality of starters to the quality of the reserves?
Ooh, to me, it's probably, offensive line. I think, and I think you could probably say that for a lot of teams in the country.
Yes,
but
that has been a very popular answer.
If one of the main, like if a guy like Jordan Morgan or Jonas Savanea got hurt, or even Wendell Moe at left guard, the drop off would be enormous. I mean, those three are just clearly better than their backups. Even at center, it would be like that. I think the offensive line is one injury away from I don't want to say being decimated, but there'd be a very clear drop off with one injury or whatever it may be.
It kind of got dealt a bit of a tough hand here. If your opinion of the league is similar to mine, like I think the other 4 teams closer to the bottom, Cal, Stanford, Colorado, and Arizona State. I kind of think of Washington State as being like a little bit of a step up from those other 4, and they don't get to play Cal, and they don't get to play. There's one other one they don't get to play, right? So they don't get to play the other 4 bottom teams, or it's just Cal they don't play, and then they have to go to Mississippi State as well, which is kind of difficult. What does this defense need to get to? Like, assuming the offense stays like top 20, top 30 level, like, do they need to go from like 125th to like 90th to make a bowl? Do they need to have a bigger jump than that? Because it's got to. They won't make a bowl if the defense doesn't make significant strides. We try to figure out like how much better do they have to be if they want to go bowling.
I think like if Arizona's defense is 8th in the conference, they make a bowl. Like it's like because they were bad. I mean, they were that bad. I think if I don't expect the defense to all of a sudden be awesome, but average. Like if they have an average defense, they'll make a bowl. I mean, there were games like last year against Cal. They scored 40 points or whatever, and they lost against Cal. They lost
Cal, which is crazy.
They lost 300 yards rushing to Cal. That, and so if they don't do that, they make a bowl. Like there were games where they just had they went on the road against Washington, scored, threw for 400 yards, whatever, and lost because they couldn't make a stop. And so if the defense was even average last year, they're in a bowl. So I would say like 8th in the conference, and they're probably in a bowl.
Awesome. Jason, I really appreciate the time, man. Like nobody knows this stuff like Jason does for Arizona, and we look forward to having him back on Cover 3 soon, man.
Thanks for joining me. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No doubt.